560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning is former state legislator Jeannie Ives, now the host of The Real Story, 7 to 9 p.m. on these airwaves on Sunday evenings. Tashara Jones is the mayor of St. Louis. St. Louis routinely competes with New Orleans and Memphis for the highest murder per capita title in the country. Recently, there was a Black Mayor's Caucus meeting on crime. I hope BLM Brandon was there. Our BLM Brandon Johnson, not Baltimore's BLM Brandon Scott. Baltimore also competes for that title with New Orleans and St. Louis and Memphis. Tashara Jones, the duly elected mayor of St. Louis, had this to say coming out of this meeting of the Black Mayor's Caucus, which is just Black Democrats, just Democrats. It really doesn't matter. They focus so much on skin color, and it doesn't matter because it can be a honky in Denver or it can be a black mayor in Chicago or St. Louis or Baltimore or Memphis, and it's the same deal. It's the same program. What to do about crime? Tashara Jones has an idea.
We have a lot of violence around convenience stores and gas stations. So how can we hold those business owners accountable and also bring down crime? And then some of the things that we're already doing, we're finding that other mayors are doing as well.
Yeah, you're all doing the same thing, I know, and it's going terribly. The convenience store, there appears to be a lot of crime around convenience stores and gas stations, so what are the owners of these businesses doing? What are they not doing that they need to be doing? Not us, not the city that's responsible for public safety. What are business owners doing? Sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Yep. Lori Lightfoot said that, right?
Yeah. And Thaddeus Jones introduced legislation, the Armed Security Protection Act. Banks, pawn shops, grocery stores, and gas stations in Cook County must employ and have on the premises at least one guard during the hours they conduct business with the public. What are you not doing, banks, pawn shops, grocery stores, gas stations in Illinois, well, in Cook County, or convenience stores and gas stations in St. Louis? What are you not doing to keep the peace? This is going very well.
Oh, my gosh. He's such a hack. So bad.
Well, that's why he's in the Illinois General Assembly.
I think he's also under investigation, too. You know, he's one of those folks.
I'm sure. I'm sure it's some right-wing conspiracy that's been cooked up against him. For more on this, I mean, crime and economic impact. Because one of the things, I was just having this discussion with a friend, who's looking to move from Lincoln Park. Gee, I wonder why. And she really likes New Orleans, but New Orleans has the same problems that Chicago does, maybe more acute, at least on a per capita basis. And she said, I like Landry, but, he's trying to do some things. You have to understand, Landry, the governor of Louisiana, these big cities cannot be saved at the state level. Kathy Hochul can deploy the National Guard for the New York City subway. You cannot save big cities from the outside. They have to decide they want to do things differently. And if they don't, one just wonders what the short-term horizon portends for Chicago, St. Louis, Baltimore, Memphis, New Orleans. For more on this, please be joined by Jim Iuorio, host of the Future's Edge podcast, also the proprietor of Brant's in Palatine. Jim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, the old saw goes, businesses won't locate in places that are not safe. These big cities, even in the commercial districts, are increasingly not safe, as everybody knows, as everybody has seen. Businesses are leaving, but that's just the natural movement of capital, and so we're told from the politicians. But, I mean, to that question, the long-term economic impacts of the lawlessness that has been condoned. Where do you see some of these big cities? And I know they're not all similarly situated. Some have more diverse economies than others. But I mean, that has to be a discussion that's going on in C-suites and among market makers.
There's no doubt. But the whole thing, you got to look at it from a 30,000-foot angle. Like, these mayors, they're not doing a bad job. They're not incompetent. They told us exactly what they were going to be. Things like squatters' rights, defund the police, decriminalize theft, no cash bail. Even, like, if you go back 4 years when the federal government came out with eviction moratorium, all that is greenlighting stealing stuff from some that doesn't belong to you, stealing housing from the evil landlord. The whole thing is ridiculous, but they're doing exactly what they said. So then the question becomes, what's the end game? And the only thing I can think of, which I'm relatively reasonably sure of, is that it's about destroying things to get in line for federal handouts in order to they don't want anything local anymore. They're globalists. They want everything to be the federal government here, and then the federal government signs us up for the globalist thing. So if you crash these cities, and you mentioned Lori Lightfoot, she literally blamed people for carrying cash. And if you can't see that they favor the criminal over the victim, they've told us they're doing it, and those people voted for them. Presumably, it's Chicago. Who knows?
Yeah, but so when you have commercial spaces being retrofitted, sort of, to be migrant shelters. When you have BLM Brandon proposing $1.2 billion in bond issuances in debt, essentially, over the next 5 years, I think it was, to build more government housing. I mean, this is an effort to transform the economy, to borrow a phrase from the big guy. And so what does that look like for Chicagoland, for example?
Well, it does look good. So there's two things here that are really interesting to play, because one is a very financial thing. You talked about, real estate, commercial real estate in big cities, which that's going to be the big economic problem, because a lot of banks have loaned money for these, and occupancy rates are through the floor. But now all of a sudden, and this is the political part that you just mentioned, filling those spaces with migrants, things like that. They're doing things that they know are politically unpopular, and they don't seem to care. That should be terrifying to everybody, particularly when we just had an election in our state, which ran one of the pro-crime candidates against a much less pro-crime candidate, and they almost won. It took 2 weeks. Like, literally, they stand up. There are people who are Kim Fox disciples who believe in all those things I mentioned before, and people are still voting for them. So I don't want to let the people off the hook. But the reality of it is I think they think they can kill two birds with one stone, because they can get federal funding to fill these spaces that are gone and are not coming back, and there will be no occupancy because people don't want to be in the loop anymore.
I understand reliable power is important to fuel a $22 trillion economy. Do I have that right? Reliable power. Reliable power. That's an important component to fuel a $22 trillion economy like America's.
Yeah, I would say is
it important? Because the Wall Street Journal piece by the editorial board opined on this, actually, talking about the coming electricity crisis, and they argue that the power sucked up by AI data centers, in combination with the transformation of our energy sector at the government's direction, the push, right, to eliminate fossil fuels, we all know this, is going to produce an electrical grid that may not be as reliable as it needs to be to power that $22 trillion economy.
Yeah, you think? These people are blowing up the energy bridge without building the other one first. I mean, if you look at things like the Inflation Reduction Act, which I giggle every time I say it because it was designed to do the exact opposite. If you look at, and right now the left will look at fossil fuel production in this country, and they'll say, we're pumping more than we ever have. Yes, but that has nothing to do with anything. Everything you see in oil right now reflects policies from 5 to 7 years ago. That's where the exploration comes in. And these wells, they do much better at the beginning of their life than they do at the end. And these wells are beginning to get older, but they're all pumping as well as they can now. So in 5 years, we're going to have the fossil fuel problem. And a lot of that, too, coal powers electricity. They hate to believe that thing, but it's true. And the other technologies are not as reliable. We saw this in the EV market with these electric cars that can't deal with winter. Yes, if you want to live in Florida or Southern California, have at it with your EV. but they don't work as well around here. And people realize that, and that's why sales are down. But the whole notion that we're going to transform on a dime, they don't understand the disruption of it and the economic calamity it causes when you get into a market like this, particularly energy, which is everything, and you disrupt it to this level. There's real hardship that comes from that, and they don't seem to care because every time there's hardship, they can just blame it on the other party, and they win from it. That's what it's really a terrible situation in the energy world.
Well, I mean, but Governor Pritzker, he's doubling down on all of this, big investments to Goshen for that EV battery plant. Just recently, IDNR apparently had a meeting a week ago, and in that meeting they announced that they're going to put electrical vehicle chargers at state parks. And, oh, by the way, if you happen to be able to get your vehicle there to enjoy nature, you get to charge your car to get back home for free. So, I mean, this is all just such a boondoggle, and everybody else who's normal is just paying for this garbage.
Do you know how you know it's a boondoggle, Jeannie? There's no questions at all. Because look at every policy. Initially, before, they'd give, tax breaks for buying EVs. But now, all the money has to go through the government. Like, if we were sitting and said, okay, we see that this technology, we probably should give it a little bit more of a tax break, and then, with that little nudge, see how the free market adopts it. Well, they realized that wasn't going to happen unless they take all the money themselves and funnel it to themselves. And then, by the way, they're like the whole notion of redistributing wealth. The government's very good at taking all the money. They're just not very good at distributing it to the places that they said they were gonna. So whatever the friction is when money goes through the government is making a lot of people rich, and those people probably have a lot of connections to the governments that's dispersing the money too. But again, I reiterate, if they thought it would work, they'd give it a little nudge from tax policy and let the free market handle it. But the free market won't handle it because the technology is dumb at this point.
Okay, one more quick question. How is that $20 minimum wage going to work out for California?
So it really is going to work out terribly. There's no cogent argument to make for minimum wage. The problem that is that there's 5 arguments against. But are people going to lose their jobs? Absolutely they are. You know what's going to happen in restaurants is that prices are going to go through the roof. But restaurants are very adaptive and nimble. What they'll do is they'll pay the people the $20 an hour, outlaw tipping, and then charge 18% surcharge in lieu of tipping. So what happens is the restaurants will end up making more money. The people will just make their $20 an hour, and the tipped employees who used to make $50 an hour at good restaurants are going to just make 20 or 25. So it's never going to help the people they think it's going to, and it always hurts, particularly ones who need job training, minimum wage, kids, people, some of the disenfranchised communities. The minimum wage jobs are training grounds for them, and they're eliminating those, and it's really appalling.
I would say you have to explain that to BLM Brandon Johnson, but it'd probably be more productive. Well, I don't know if it'd be more productive, but it'd be more appropriate to try to explain that to dilettantes on the lakefront and in wealthy, leafy suburbs. The basic econ 101.
My dog how to deal blackjack after that.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I know it's tough.
But we'll point out,
right.
We have a difference of opinion because I think BLM Brandon. You're saying he's dumb and incompetent. I don't think that's true anymore. I think these people don't care one bit that their policies are toxic. A policy that sounds good that causes problems is the cherry for them right now, because then they can blame it on their opponent. So I've shifted to sinister over incompetence. Eventually.
No, it's a combination. You need both. You need useful idiots, and then you need the sinister masterminds. And Brandon Johnson is definitely more on the useful idiot side than the sinister mastermind. But I mean,
I'll give you that one.
There's also some hybrids. They're a little bit of both. Yeah. So. The other thing I wanted to get to is crypto. So we had this conversation with our mutual friend Scott the Cow Guy Shellady on Friday of last week. I think Thursday or Friday, regardless. It was last week, and Scott the Cow Guy, not a buyer of crypto, and I just wanted to get your take on this too. Is there a burgeoning consensus that crypto is a thing, and it's a thing with staying power? And when BlackRock sets up the fastest growing ETF in human history around crypto, around Bitcoin, then you probably should take judicial notice and expect that even if you don't understand sort of the underlying point And even if this turns out to be more hype than transformation, that you might want to think about including some of this in your portfolio.
So I'm a definite yes on that. And this is, again, I don't give anyone else advice, and I may be wrong on this, but I started getting into crypto several years ago, and then I accelerated that, what you mentioned, with the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and the Fidelities. Because, again, BlackRock's truly our overlord. If they're getting into crypto, then there should be some staying power in crypto, is my guess. But at the end of the day, if you look, I don't know if you've watched gold much at all, too. Gold has gone through the roof, including last night. Gold rallied about $50 last night in futures. And I think what these two markets, Bitcoin and gold, are telling us, they're basically a no confidence vote in the stewardship of fiat currency, which, by the way, that seems like a very reasonable position to take when we're bumping out the national debt, $1 trillion every 100 days. So if you have me at no confidence, and that's why I'm in Bitcoin. And again, do I understand every nuance of it? No, I don't. Do I think that people are trying to create a medium of exchange that operates outside a fiat currency system? Yeah, I do. And if they're right, I don't want to be on the sidelines. So I definitely have a portion of my dollar hedge portfolio in Bitcoin.
Jim Iuorio, host of the Futures Edge podcast, also the proprietor of Brandt's Restaurant in Palatine. Jim, thank you as always.
Thank you for having me.
And Jim Iuorio joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Have you saved enough? What are you going to do with Social Security? What will your taxes look like in retirement? Scott Tucker believes retirement planning should be easy, and you should be able to get all the information you need in one place. That's why Scott created the Retirement Decoded Toolkit, a comprehensive resource for your retirement. In it, you'll find a copy of his latest book, Escape